Hey, welcome back to the show. If you are like me, the fourth quarter is your favorite time of the year for a lot of reasons. Yes, it's the holidays. Maybe it's football season for you. But for me, this is the time of the year when the vast majority of people simply slow down, stop working, stop marketing, and basically ensure a horrible first quarter. But you and I, we know differently. We know that the harder we work in the fourth quarter with family time, with fun time, with holidays, maybe a little football, all the things you love, if you prioritize revenue and taking care of your clients, the fourth quarter will be bananas for you. And more importantly, you're going to set the tone for how 2025 is going to be. So to help me do that, I was texting with my partner, Jimmy Mackin, who you know and love. He and I working together at Listing Leads, and we started looking at what are the most important campaigns you should be doing right now with your database and perhaps around your database, other lead sources, to put yourself in the best possible position to win. So if you're on the subway and you're listening, you should definitely get your laptop out or at least your phone and start taking notes. If you are watching this on YouTube, give us feedback, give us comments. You know, always like a thumb, a subscribe and all that fun stuff. But mostly, I want your comments. And no matter what, take notes and then take action. So Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Tom. As you were saying all of that, I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes from a guy by the name of James Dyson. He said, when you start to feel tired, that's when you accelerate because that's when you win.
That's
and I
right.
think there's a note that I just have written on my computer, which is treat the last 90 days like the first 90 days. All of us come out of the new year kind of on fire. We come out with a lot of energy and excitement. If you apply that same mindset to the beginning of the year, I mean, that's when the magic happens. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into it, Tom.
Me too. I got to throw one more thought at you. Big shout out to Chris, who everyone calls him his mom's name, Pat, who was in my mastermind last week in Dallas. Jimmy, you'll appreciate this. Thinking about this time of the year, he said one of his mentors shared with him that the typical entrepreneur begins to slow down the week before any one of the 5 major holidays. They certainly slow down a lot during that holiday week. And in many cases, they struggle to kind of get things going again the third week out. So he said, essentially, the average entrepreneur has 15 missing weeks a year. And if you could just win those 15 weeks, you're going to crush the entire year. So the timing is right. Yeah. I think the mindset right for the person listening. They're like, yes, let's get it on. So Jimmy, what campaign should we start with? We're going to get everybody to connect with their database, generate some opportunities. Yeah. Some of it's going to be email, some of it's going to be text, some of it's going to be direct mail. Talk to us.
Well, there's a stat I saw this morning that just blew me away. The FHFA, which is the Fair Housing Financial Agency, talked about this idea that 1.3 million sellers sat on the sidelines between 2022 and 2023. Now, the data doesn't go up to 2024, so it'd be probably not a big stretch, Tom, to say it's probably around 2.5 million people who want to sell who've wanted to sell for the last 2 years, who just haven't sold because they've been stuck with a 3% interest rate. And so David Childers, our buddy David Childers, over Keeping Current Matters, said to me, he goes, Jimmy, when interest rates get into the 5s, 35% of would-be sellers enter back into the market. And so we have this incredible opportunity right now at this moment to re-engage all of the people who are currently like sitting on the sidelines, who want to sell, who are currently locked in. And so the script I would use, Tom, for these folks, the first strategy for the 3 strategies we'll share with you today is I am going to dramatically increase my SOI touches. And the script I'm going to read to you right now is the exact script that I would send to get people to raise their hands. It starts off like this. Hey, Tom, I'm catching up with a lot of my clients right now. We're seeing a pretty big uptick in activity since the Fed cut rates. How has the recent change in mortgage rates impacted your real estate plans this year? And so that is the exact script I'm sending. And the hope is
say it one more time. And you always do a nice job of breaking down why we said it like this, why we use this transition, and what the CTA was. So give it to us one more time.
So it opens up with, "Hey, Tom, I'm catching up with a lot of my clients." And so what I'm doing with that line is I'm diffusing the fact that I'm not trying to sell them. I'm just this is my hey, I'm just checking back in with you. This is part of my normal service operating agreement for you as a client. What's the reason why I'm catching up? The reason why I'm catching up is because we're seeing this increase in activity. And I say that line specifically, we're seeing a pretty big uptick because we had this herd mentality as human beings that we tend to follow the masses. And so if people are now entering back into the market, we then internally, even subconsciously, ask ourselves the question, well, should we think about entering back into the market? And then the question I ask is an easy to answer, open ended question designed not for a yes or a no, Tom. Rather, it's designed for them to share with me some insight in terms of what they're actually planning. Because they may not be looking to make a move, Tom, let's say in the next 60 days. But wouldn't you like to know if they're thinking about making a move in the first 60 days of 2025?
Yes.
And so when we bring all that together, I'll give you the script from the jump here, Tom. Hey, Tom, I've been catching up with a lot of my clients. We're seeing a pretty big uptick since the Fed cut the rates. How has the recent change in mortgage rates impacted your real estate plans this year? And so
So
when you stack all those things together,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
What I'm saying is this script here, Tom, and this is an important footnote for everyone who's listening. Your SOI is not just the people in your CRM database. Tom, you can talk about this a bit more than I can, but like when you think about ways in which you can distribute this script beyond the people who are in your database, who might else you also be going after?
Oh my goodness. I would take every old lead that shut me down and
Mhm.
didn't decide not to buy a house because rates went to 6 and then 7 and then 8 and then back
Yeah.
down to 7 and they've been waiting. And most of you could go right into your CRM and just take, I don't know, the second half of 2022 to like 45 days ago and just say every new
Yeah.
lead that was generated at that time period, I would be sending those texts to them as well. I want to add one more thing to the text. You and I both know when we would teach people to send the Zillow Zestimate, right? There was something
Yeah.
about the text, but also that visual. So this weekend I was sitting with Kathy and we're looking at Realtor.com's heat map feature where you can literally go zip code by zip code inside of a city and it tells you how hot it is, or is it lukewarm,
Yeah.
or is it icy cold? And I would take it one step further and I would literally screenshot that, like their specific part of
Yeah.
town, and go, look, it says you're right now at an 87.8, which is the hottest a market could be, right? It validates the big uptick in activity. And even if it's in the blue zone where it's saying it's colder, the market has less activity, you could say, even though it's blue, we're seeing an uptick because of the interest rates. It's been cold, it's been blue because interest rates have been so high. So I think a visual like that could be interesting to add as well.
I love that idea. And Redfin put data up this recently about the fact that we saw a 68% increase in the mortgage lock-ins last week since the Fed cut rates. And it's so important to understand because that's a forward-looking indicator of what purchase activity is going to look like in Q4. And I said this morning on social media, I'm like, we are primed for an incredible Q4. And I just don't think people realize it. All the forward-looking indicators are saying, hey, we're going to start seeing a big uptick in activity. So yeah, I'm just a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of reconnecting with people in my database. And Tom, let me give you some stats on this too. 80% of follow-ups, or 80% of conversions, 80% of conversions happen with between the 5th follow-up and the 12th follow-up. And so this idea that even if you checked, and you made a great point, I want to make sure people didn't miss it. Even if I checked in with these folks 30 days ago, and they're like, hey, Jimmy, we're not going to make any moves. Okay, well, a lot has changed in 30 days. And so getting in the habit of kind of re-engaging those folks is a really smart strategy to start building that pipeline for Q4.
So I have two thoughts. It's always, my friends, pay attention to modality. Like I have literally I'm dating myself here, in the carpool lane, picking up my kids, looking at a home for sale on whatever portal I was looking at, text an agent friend of mine and said, I'd like to see this house. He calls me back. I'm now out of the carpool lane, back into my busy life, and I no longer have interest.
Yep.
That's how fast
Mm-hmm.
consumers like modality changes. So to your point, we need to over communicate between now and the end of the year. So I'm gonna add one more element to this. If I was sitting with you right now, for my friend listening, I would grab your cell phone. I would go to your contacts. I'm doing this right now for myself. I would go to your contacts. So watch this, Jimmy. I have right now in my contacts 8,962 people. I would then take that number and I would times it by 6%. To your point earlier, here's what we know to be true. 6% of the people in your phone are going to move in the next 12 months. Now, forever it was 10. When rates got to 8, it was like 3. We're now looking back at that 6 number. Realtor.com has said it. Redfin has said it. Everyone's sort of stating the same thing. And what I want everyone listening, you specifically, my friend listening, is to acknowledge you don't have a lead problem. You have an activity problem. You don't have a lead problem. You might have a prioritization problem. You might be saying, oh my God, I've got to text 30 people, 70 people, 500 people, 800 people. My response is, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to do? Like if you just created a discipline that says, I'm going to text 10 people every single day, and I'm going to text them this specific text between now and the end of the year, you know what you're going to have now? You're going to have a revenue problem, as in too much of it. And that would be a quality thing. So 6%, figure out your number. Put it in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. What is 6% of your database? Because that is the available amount of listings that will happen in your database. I'm not saying you're going to get them all, but that's the number. So Jimmy, what's the second campaign?
Second campaign, before we dive into second campaign, real quick, just to recap, what we're saying is right now, first, use this script to text the people who are currently in your database. Tom said 6% is going to transact in the next 12 months. Use different modalities. I love the idea of the Realtor.com heat map. I think it's a really smart addition. And number 3, I'd say extend this to video, text messages, DMs on social, beyond just your CRM. So you can use different modalities and different channels to really get as much juice out of this thing as possible. Number 2.
Hey, Jimmy, just really fast before we go to number 2, I know we keep having fun and playing off each other here. Would you take that text and also maybe take the heat map from Realtor.com and send it in an email to your database? Would you post that heat map and maybe do a screenshot, or a green screen video on Instagram? Or does it lose the thing that you and I both know matters so much? Hey, Jimmy, like the personalization side.
A solid business plan is your roadmap to achieving your career goals. With a real estate business plan, you're not just reacting to the market, you're anticipating it. Track your progress, manage your resources, and seize new opportunities. Your journey in real estate is a story waiting to be told. Let your business plan be the pen that writes it.
It's funny. I was texting with our buddy Vanessa Riley from Domo Realty last week, and she goes, she generated 24 leads from Instagram and 1 listing appointment, doing exactly what you just described. And so what she had a picture of the interest rates dropping, and she said, and using the script that we just gave you, which is how has the recent change in mortgage rates impacted your real estate plans? And she had a poll, which is we're entering back into the market. We're planning on selling. We're waiting until 2025. And so it's a great point. Tom and I are going to get to point number 2 here in a second, but we got to hammer home point number 1 here, which is this idea that using different distribution channels for one really good idea is how the pros do it. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the green screen. I'm a huge fan of the Instagram poll. I'm a huge fan of the email campaign. These are all different channels that can get you in front of more people.
Good. What's number 2?
Number 2, Mr. Beast leaked, or there was a leaked memo of Mr. Beast's internal communication to his team recently, Tom. And for everyone who's watching this, maybe Hector can drop in the show notes afterwards. It's probably one of the more interesting kind of looks at one of the most interesting founders in the content creation space. And in that 36-page memo, he had a line that I wrote down because I thought it was so incredibly smart. He said, creativity saves money. Finding creative solutions is often better than throwing money at problems. And I think right now, we're in a position, a lot of agents are in a position right now where we want to be focused on, as you say, prioritizing revenue, but we also want to be cost conscious and do it in an economic way. And so one of the ways you can do that is this concept that you hear Tom and I talk about all the time, which is every buyer can become a listing and every listing can become another listing. And so what I think about is I think about the tactics, Tom, that are really centered around your activity in the local market. And so this is the appointment strategy, which is to say that every time you are either showing a house, going on a listing appointment, meeting your photographer, videographer, hosting an open house, or maybe even just helping a client prepare for closing, every time you're in the area, you should let everybody else who is in and around that home know that you're in the area. And so we've had countless members of the community execute these what we refer to as kind of appointment sales campaigns. And the basic idea is it's incredibly simple. As if I'm going to reach out to people in the area, I'm going to say, hey, Tom, my name's Mackin. I'm going to be in your neighborhood because one of your neighbors hired me to sell their house. I'm not sure if this is for you, but if you'd like me to get you an updated home value report on what your home is going to be worth once we sell this home, I'm happy to swing by and give you an update. And that's the general broad brushstroke scripts there. But the idea there, Tom, is if you map out, this is what I would do if I was a real estate agent right now looking to accelerate. I would say, okay, let me just map out all the places I'm going to be next week or for the next 2 weeks. Appointments, meetings, open houses, listing appointment, etc. And I'd say, I'm going to have either myself or my team is going to call around in advance, or I'm going to drop letters in advance to every appointment I'm going on in hopes of booking another appointment for that same day. Because can you imagine, Tom, if I'm like, hey, I've got Tuesday, I've got a listing appointment. I'm driving 45 minutes to this listing appointment, right? Tuesday at like 11 a.m. And then I just booked another one for 12 or 12:30 or 1 o'clock. Doesn't that make everything a lot more efficient in your business? Doesn't that allow you to kind of squeeze more revenue in less time? So that would be the tactic I would be thinking about, Tom, is how do you take every listing appointment and turn it into more listings? You start marketing around your appointments is the idea.
I love it. And it actually, so I'm going to divert from this with a different insight. For my friend listening, when was the last time you took your past client only database and uploaded it into maps.google to get a visual of where all of your past clients are? If you haven't done that, I highly recommend it. Uploading an Excel file into Google or any other mapping tool, I really don't care. But what I want you to see is I want you to start to visualize where all your clients are. Now, if you take it one step further, I would then take your entire sphere of influence and I would do the same, but I would color code them differently. Like the reds are past clients and the blues are sphere of influence. And to Jimmy's point, like this is something that I would tell people, if you were trying to figure out how I could raise my average sales price, as an example. Well, you fish where the higher end fish are. If I was trying to figure out where I should geographic farm, I'm going to say to you, obviously, you want to farm where you have influence. So you need to see a map of where your customers are, the communities that you're in. But to Jimmy's point, hey, if I'm going to be at 123 Mockingbird Street and I have 2 past clients there, why would I not handwrite a note or send them a text and say, hey, I'm going to be in the area meeting with another seller. I'd love to just stop by and say hi. Even just that, it's the efficiency of I'm in that area. I want to have multiple other touch points that either improve my business, improve my brand, create better relationships, keep me top of mind. So Jimmy, not to divert from the point, but to add to it.
No, it's such a great insight there, which is going after the people who already are in your database, who you already know, who already love you. I mean, this is even if you're just dropping notes by, it makes a ton of sense. But the real key insight that Tom is sharing here is this idea that consumers want to hire agents who understand, sellers in particular want to hire agents who understand their local area. So by demonstrating through your marketing that you know the local area, by the sheer fact that you're there, creates a little bit of trust that this individual is an expert. And this is no different, Tom, than from any one of these home servicing companies that sell any type of home care, whether it's solar or whether it's, landscaping. They're just like, hey, I was in your area. I mean, their entire industry is built on this, hey, I was in your area script as an example. So again, the big insight here is every appointment you have, not just a listing appointment, every open house, every showing, every buy side or sell side, every listing appointment, think how you can turn that into more opportunities to have more conversations with people in that local area. That's how you create efficiency. That's how you get, as Mr. Beast would say, be really creative to drive revenue for your business.
On that same note, a year-ish ago, one of the great emails that came out was, basically, I'm on my way to go meet with a potential seller in this neighborhood. Yeah. Is it that email, or is it that email now as the great, Chris Benjamin did, doing it on social, which has been killing it? Could that be added into this to sort of sweeten it up and let people know I'm going to be in the area? Ping me and let's connect.
Well, you know what I would do in this case? It's a good question. What I would do is, what's the one thing that every listing agent does in preparation for a listing appointment? They prepare a CMA.
Yes.
And so here's what I would do is, when you prepare a CMA, you're going to understand very quickly how much equity that individual has gained since they purchased the property. So we have this campaign, which is called the Equity Update Letter. And so what you could do, and this one crushes.
Yes.
It's, hey neighbor, I recently completed a home value equity update for your neighbors. It turns out they've gained $123,000 in the last, 24 months. You live in a highly desirable neighborhood, which might be the reason why your neighbor called me to potentially sell their home. To find out how much your home value has increased in the last 12 months, text me at blank and I'll prepare a free professional report for you today. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. So what I would do there, Tom, and we'll have a visual to share with everyone as well here, but what I'll do with you here, the reason I'm doing that is I'm creating this kind of curiosity gap in the mind of the consumer, which is I'm trying to get them to say, yeah, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Great. That's interesting. That's unique. It's timely. It's personalized. But is there a way I can turn the volume up on it? Is there a way where I can get them to go, I wonder how much equity I've gained.
Right.
And let me give you some stats on this, Tom, because this is mind blowing. We were texting with our buddy Ryan Young over at Fellow recently, and he says, Jimmy, this is important for everyone to write down. He said, we track 3 different types of lead conversion behaviors: home value leads, cash offer leads, and seller leads. So a seller lead is a come list me lead, right? A cash offer lead is going to be, we want to get a cash offer for our home. And a home value lead, hey, I'm curious what my home is worth. What he has found is that 8.2% of all home value leads will transact in the next 12 months. 21% of all cash offer leads will transact in the next 12 months. And then 31% of all seller leads will transact in the next 12 months. So what I would say here, Tom, which is probably worth exploring, is that you can go with the, hey, if you want to know what your home is worth angle, you can use that angle. Or you can use the exact script we just gave you and say, if you're thinking about potentially skipping the market and you're just interested in a fair or a cash offer that's actually the value of your home, contact us here. Or if you're like, hey, we're thinking about selling, you're thinking about selling and you want to get more information about the next steps, give us a call. So you can experiment with different CTAs. And each of those CTAs is going to give you a different type of lead. The home value leads you probably get more of, although have a lower conversion rate. The cash offer, you'll have a higher conversion rate, and the straight, fastball seller lead, you'll have the highest conversion rate on. So just to recap everything I just said there, Tom, if I was a real estate agent and I was trying to market these appointments that I'm going on, I would use that home value script that we just gave you. And I would just simply experiment with different CTAs to see which one got the best response rate.
I love it. I just took, Jimmy, the stat that we shared at the summit, where we broke down 1.1 million agents hadn't had a listing sell in the first 7 months of the year. And for the person that's listening, if you weren't there, I'll just give you the stats real fast. let's call it 215,000 agents averaged 1 to 4. 91,000 averaged 5 to 10 listings sold, call it 7 per average. 30,000 agents had 14 listings sell and close in the first 7 months. 6,255 had 24 listings sell in the first 7 months. But this is where it gets crazy. 2,579 agents had 36 listings sell and close in the first 7 months, and an astounding 2,134 averaged 123 listings sold in the first 7 months. Now, here we are talking about some absolutely brilliant listing attraction campaigns that you and I both know absolutely work when you apply it. Jimmy, I want to switch gears before we look at like the next campaign. I actually want to know, in your opinion, what does an agent have to start doing and what does an agent have to stop doing in order to go from, I say this with love, and I'm not saying this is you for my friend that's listening, loosey-goosey with their schedule, loosey-goosey with their priorities, kind of allowing the market and maybe an individual client to whiplash them around in circumstances versus saying, this is what I'm committed to. This is what I'm going to do. I'm stopping doing this. I'm going to start doing this because I'm sick and tired of being where I'm at on the number of listings I'm getting.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll tell you what I've seen work really well for really highly productive high achievers. Your inbox is someone else's to-do list. And I think a lot of people right now fall into a trap of they're reacting to what everyone else is asking them to do. So let me take my marketer hat off for a second, Tom, and put my CEO hat on. Okay. Really good CEOs and really good leaders and founders all understand clearly what their main priority is and what their goal is, what their North Star is. And everything they do is oriented around that North Star. Unfortunately, what happens is when you start to become successful, there's a sort of call it gravitational force that pulls you into the minutia, pulls you into sort of the operations of the business, pulls you into all the little nitty-gritty details that are seemingly important, seemingly urgent, but really do not have any impact on the overall success of the business. And so what I would be doing if I was an agent right now who was looking to really get dialed into the next level is I would have an honest and sober conversation with myself, recognizing, okay, my job, and you've heard Tom say this at Summit, is to prioritize revenue. This is not something I'm outsourcing to my marketing director. This is not something I'm outsourcing to my sales manager. This is not something I'm having some junior agent who just joined the team figure out how to do. I am owning revenue. And so when I own revenue, what that means is I'm going to make sure it's not just the organization's priority, rather it's my priority. And too often, Tom, people kind of sit back in their chair and they think about managing people to manage revenue. I don't know a good CEO who doesn't think about revenue every day and tries to directly control it. And so if I'm in this position right now, I am now saying my job is not necessarily or not only to help support the team, support the organization, support the goals. My job is to go out there and rainmake. And you can do that in 100 different ways. You don't have to be the one on phone calls with customers, but you can be the one developing scripts for your agents. You can be the one kind of building lists in the CRM. Don't let your ego get in the way of progress. So that's where my head goes, Tom, as I think about this idea of like, I mean, you know me. I am incredibly focused and driven when it comes to these things. And I think anytime that you become too far detached from revenue, guess what happens? It starts to decline, right? Like when you start outsourcing it, you start to realize, oh, that was probably a bad idea. I mean, as you said before, Tom, like revenue kind of solves everything, all the pain of the business.
So for the person that's an individual, when Jimmy says outsourcing revenue, you can interpret that as you're not focused on it, that it's not a priority for you, that if I walked into your bathroom, I wouldn't see on the mirror, I close X million dollars of sales every month, every week, whatever it may be. The second you stop doing that as a business person, the second you stop saying, my focus for my business. Now, I know someone's listening, it's like, Jimmy, Jimmy, I asked a question the other day on X, and so if you were one of the people that responded, you could take this personally. I said, control or money, which one is more important to you? And the amount of people that responded, freedom, happiness. So I called my coach, Dr. Julie Gerner, and I said, did you see my tweet on X? And she's like, yeah. She said, you probably asked the wrong people. That was her feedback. You asked the wrong people. So when you're running a business, one could argue it's the balance between those two things that matter the most. Do you want all the control or do you want all the money? You can only have one. You really can only have one. So what I tell people is if you're sitting there listening to this right now and you really want, you're like, I've heard Tom, I've heard Jimmy, I've heard Jason, I've heard all these amazing people. They're all saying the same thing, which is you can do it if you apply yourself. You can. You have to start to prioritize. Here is my list. You ready? The morning is focused on attracting listings. Period. End of story. It's not focused on the nonsense BS that potentially you're currently doing. When I get to the office and I get on the MLS and I kind of dabble around there, then I go on my phone and I look at social and then I think about how come I don't shoot enough Instagram reels? So I Google, should I Instagram, more reels? And then you wake up and it's noon and the morning is over. No, these people their morning is focused on listing attraction. Their marketing and social is focused on listing attraction. They are disciplined in their follow-up. But I think the big one is if you just stop right there, if you just made that shift, we all know what would happen. But I think the other one, Jimmy, is people have got to give up this notion that they're busy or they're not enough or they don't have enough. Everybody starts their career in real estate at zero. That's it. It's the world famous tale of the two. Two people get in the business. Jimmy and I both go to the same licensing school. We go to work for the same brokerage. He goes out and sells 100 homes in his first 4 years, and I sell 4 in my first 4 years. The difference was his mindset, right? He figured out that he could. And I would say the third one, if I had to add a third, it would be the realization that if you're not making the kind of money that you should, other people in your life are negatively impacted by your decision. Let that one sit in. I've never, ever seen a spouse come up to me and say, the problem is you've got my spouse making so much damn money, we're not sure what to do anymore. I have heard plenty of conversations of, hey, my spouse has made some bad decisions, they're not doing it, and it's hurting us financially. So I would just ask you to consider, especially between now and the end of the year, who could you make the biggest impact for by doing the work? It's like when people run a marathon and they donate the emotion and the energy to someone. They raise money for cancer, right? But they go out and they do this work to do good by others. Just think about that and those other points. Jimmy, thoughts before we transition into the last campaign?
There's a wonderful quote by a guy named Ed Lattimore. He says, someone with half your IQ is making 10x as you because they aren't smart enough to doubt themselves.
Bingo.
And I think a lot, right? Like I think a lot of that for everything you just said, I was just thinking through. I'm like, it really just comes down to this basic idea that the moment you realize you are in control of your calendar, because everyone's got a busy calendar today, Tom, maybe even this week. But if you were to go a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, you realize it's probably empty. And so that is a moment of freedom where you realize you are in control. And when you're in control, you can make the decisions. When we make the decisions, you should focus on things that actually make you money. So number 3 here, Tom, on the list, as we go to land the plane here, in investing, they have this concept called alpha, which is this idea of you're trying to find this kind of moment in the market where you've got some insight or some, unique perspective where you can beat the market. And so every investor is always looking for alpha. And I think we got some alpha right now in real estate. Hear me out on this. In the great sort of run up of the pandemic, as the late great Steve Harvey called it, the unicorn years, we had a record low number of listings expire. And so that went on for probably anywhere between 18 and 24 months. The people who built their businesses on expireds had to pivot into other forms of customer acquisition, SOI, farming, dialing for dollars, you name it. And so you saw this sort of mass exodus kind of leave the expired market, and and likely when the market shifted, it did not return. And so what I was talking to our buddy Ren Jones of our Espresso agent recently. He said, Jimmy, the number of expired listings has doubled in the last 12 months. Now, Tom, you and I both know that number is going to likely double again in the next 12 months, not because the market is softening or we're heading into a real estate, recession, rather because a lot of agents have lost practice of how to communicate with a seller on a longer sales cycle. So if you're not accustomed to servicing a customer for 60 or 90 days and you don't have a coach helping you, or you don't have a mentor helping you, or you don't have experience doing this, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get in a situation where you have nothing to update the seller on after the first few weeks, and then they're going to lose confidence and they're going to potentially cancel the contract. So the alpha here's the alpha, Tom. The alpha here is the fact that we are going to see a steady increase in expireds, but we have not seen a steady increase in the number of agents doing expired marketing. Our mutual friend Tom Toole is just texting me the other day. He's got 5 listings this last week from expired marketing. So we can get some scripts here, Tom, but I want to get your reaction to this. I think if I'm looking for alpha going into 25, I am adding a new channel, and that new channel is likely going to be expired marketing, depending obviously on my market.
It's so funny. I woke up at 4:00 this morning thinking about how we launched this company nearly 20 years ago around the Core 4 and how that's been modified.
Mm-hmm.
So the Core 4 listing attraction channels and expireds were always the 5th outlier, or dependent upon the market you were in, it would be replaced with something else. And there's no doubt, not in every marketplace across, the world are we going to experience this. Certainly not in every North American marketplace are we going to experience this. But there are pockets in your community where you will see it. Mm-hmm. And the interesting part is, Jimmy, most of those pockets are in the high end. And if you were looking for a way to increase your price point in 2025, the argument I would make on your behalf is you're good. You have a track record. You've just never marketed to somebody with a multi-million, whatever, 5 million, 2 million, 10 million, 100 million, whatever the price is. You've just never gone after them. And I think about the number of people that have been on my show in the last 10 years that literally said, yeah, you want to know how I got into the high-end market in New York City? I called every expired listing. And what I would say is, hey, Jimmy, if you'll have me over, I will bring with me, and they would name 2 top agents. The top agent in the building that worked inside their office. And they would leverage the top agent in the building or in their office to win the listing. And I remember Randy Burra, big shout out to Randy from, he literally said, Tom, the first listing I got was a $15 million listing. He's like, and I didn't even care if they paid me a 25% referral fee. I was then able to say I was a part of this transaction. And then that building became a geographic farm. Then I called the next one, and I called the third one. I didn't need those other agents because I now had a few deals under my belt. So you can hear my enthusiasm around this point, but let me give you the flip side. Jimmy, do you remember being single? You've been married to your lovely wife, Sandra, for a long time. Do you remember being single?
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I don't remember going that well, Tom.
Yes. So
yes.
Well, I didn't want to go that deep, but a friend not to be named who I saw Thursday night at our little, the building I live in, do these little cocktail parties. And she mentioned to me that she was recently stood up on a date. So imagine, this beautiful woman, she says, I go to the restaurant and I'm sitting in the bar and, I get there kind of, a little bit late because she thought that was the right move. And so she's sitting there and it's, it's 7 and then it's 7:15 and the bartender's looking at her like, do you want to order some food? She's like, no, I'm waiting for someone. You've been waiting for a while. She's like, at around 7:28, that was her number. She realized she had been stood up, and what she had was a massive unmet expectation. So let's play this out. You ready? What if an incredibly handsome person of her sexual preference turned to her and said, hey, good looking. You could tell how long I've been single, or That's never, right? Married for 33 years. Hey, good looking. If you're single, I don't know if that line would work. I would guess not. But if somebody would have hit on her in that moment, the reality was for 28 minutes, she was getting revved up with anxiety and anger. Now, here's my point. That's an expired listing when you call them. So if you can acknowledge that this person has had a massive unmet expectation, there's a pretty good chance based upon the NAR numbers, 68% of people that list their house list based upon proximity. So I've been playing pickleball with Julie forever. She lists my house. She did a few open houses. I'm not going to say to you, I chose the price. I'm going to say that, she just didn't get the job done. And now I've got someone calling me and saying, I'm number one, I'm the best, and I can help. Just remember, that's why the perception of expired listings is they're mean and nasty and not worth working. Instead, I say have incredible empathy for their situation. I don't think I would call them and say, hey, I'm sure you figured out that your home came up on our computer as an expired. No, how about I woke up this morning and I saw that your property didn't sell. And I thought to myself, I wonder how much they're missing right now. What were their plans? Where were they trying to go? And hey, look, Jimmy, you're going to get 10 phone calls today from people trying to beat down your door and try and figure this out. But if you still have the desire to go from here to there, I'd love to throw my hat in the ring and have an honest conversation about what it's going to take to get you top dollar in today's market. And if you were the first person to have that conversation and not the seventh, you're going to have a better shot. And I would do that. I would redo that script probably 10 ways to Sunday. But that's the point.
Sure.
Ready? They've had a massive unmet expectation, and now you're marketing to them. So just remember that in your marketing.
It's such an important point to double click on here, Tom. I'm gonna read the opening line of a script that we use at Listing Leads that helped Lourdes book a $25 million listing appointment, and just it reaffirms exactly what you said there. It opens up by saying, now that your home didn't sell, you've had a wave of agents promising you they can get the deal done. You've heard the story before. You're not buying it. At this point, you're frustrated, disappointed, and likely pretty annoyed because your phone hasn't stopped ringing in the last 2 weeks. If the home hasn't sold, it's for 3 reasons. It wasn't priced correctly. It didn't get enough exposure. It wasn't presented properly. Now, if you believe it was number one, which is pricing, you don't need another agent. You just need to lower the price. And the letter kind of goes on and goes into more detail. But what you just said, we actually have put into practice. It is getting appointments right now. This idea of using empathy in your marketing and the way you build an emotional connection. I'll give a quick pro tip here, Tom. The way you build an emotional connection through marketing is you describe the situation, you describe the feelings, and you describe the desired outcome. And so most people skip 1 and 2. They go, hey, if you're still trying to sell your house, give us a call. Here's our number. We've done it before for lots of people. Describe the situation. What are they dealing with? Can you think of anything worse than being on the market for 180 days, being in limbo, never sure if you're going to get a phone call, and then saying, the hell with it, I'm not going to list my house. I'll just do it again. And all of a sudden you get a wave of people calling you saying, hey, we'll help you. They don't want to talk to you right now. And so I think this is a really important moment right now that Tom is breaking down for you guys, is this idea that some of these techniques, you call it the core 4, Tom, and expired being number 5. I'm really curious what the first 4 are, by the way. So as a quick footnote, some of these techniques, when Tom and I say, hey, you should think about and explore expired marketing, don't just run the status quo playbook. Okay. So take the channel, but let's see if we can turn the dial up a little bit on the empathy gauge here and figure out creative ways to stand out. I always believe, Tom, when it comes to marketing, be different on purpose. And so by showing a lot of empathy and by actually even saying, don't hire me if you just think it's price, is a great way for you to differentiate. Now, stop, Tom, let me give you a quick stat. Only 20, this is according to Espresso Agent, only 28% of expired listings relist with the same agent.
Bingo. And
so you've got this kind of window that, and I think a lot of the follow-ups probably likely in the first sort of 7 to 14 days. And if we had Carolyn Young on this call and Tom Toole on this call, they'd probably give us a lot of insight on expireds they've converted on like month 3 or month 6, all day long. But I just think there's just such a big opportunity, not only to improve the quality of the follow-up, but also improve the length in which you follow up. It ain't just about the first couple days. It's about saying, hey, can we develop a plan that continues on past that first sort of 2 weeks of them being bombarded by every other agent in the market?
So, Jimmy, I was thinking about that letter. And for the person that's listening, my mentor was a guy named Mike Vance. And Mike coined the phrase when asked about Walt Disney, his boss of 9 years. He said what made Walt so special is he thought outside of the box. And funny enough, remember Taco Bell, they did Think Outside the Bun, right? He got paid a fortune for that. And I remember when that was released, I called him and I'm like, was that you? And he's like, yes. He said, I hated it, but I got paid very well. So it worked out well for everybody. I was thinking about early days of expired listings, shout outs like David Solomon, who was one of the first, and I'm going back like 2 decades ago, that started sending expired listing letters in like Federal Express envelopes, right? So you knew it was going to get delivered. And then there was a bunch of our clients in the higher end. And again, price point specific, always being mindful that it made sense to deliver it in a box that looks somewhat like a Tiffany color blue. And they would deliver the letter. So picture the letter inside of this Tiffany blue box with the wrap, a sold sign inside of it, sometimes an easy button. You with me? Like that was easy. Sold sign and the letter. But the thing that just hit me today was, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody had the chutzpah to go out and buy like 25 of those little like boxes you would put a diamond ring in or a wedding ring and have that letter folded up so tightly that it was inside of that in the ring. So when they open it up, they get this letter and they have to open the whole thing apart. And it's like, I bet you've been reached by, tens of agents in your marketplace calling with the same old strategy. We take a very different approach to marketing your home. I mean, just something like that, I think would just be so fantastic. So if you're going to do that, please send me a DM on Instagram and tell me that you did it. I want to hear all about it. I know without a shadow of a doubt, that shit works. When you stand so far out from everybody else, it could just be that your presentation could be the same as everybody else. Doesn't make a difference. That one thing made you so recognizable and different. And that's one of the meta models for people making decisions. Do I want the same 28% or do I want the balance? I want difference.
Tom, it's funny because I know you and I could talk about this for hours. And as we begin to wrap here, I think what you said is an important point to just everyone to refocus on here for a second. If you were to ask the average American, what is the most exclusive credit card? There's Visa, there's MasterCard, there's Discover. What is the most exclusive credit card? The one that is symbolic of being wealthy, the one is symbolic of status. I would say 9 out of 10 people would likely say the American Express Black Card. And so they just took a like titanium card or steel card and they spray painted it black, and all of a sudden this thing became a status symbol. People are paying, the $5,000 annual fee for the Black Card for no other reason, just to signal the fact that, hey, yes, I've reached that status. So this idea of small changes to the delivery of a message or a product or a service can have an extraordinary impact on people's perception of it. And what you're describing, Tom, and I think it's such an important idea, and the real world example of the American Express Black Card, and call it just any marketing, direct mail marketing, is sending it in an overnight FedEx Express package. That is if you get something in that mail, you say, this is important. And I bet you, Tom, I don't know how much it costs these days because I haven't FedEx something in a long time. But I'm sure if you were to say, listen, if you talk to your title rep, there are like probably 300 homes are likely going to sell in the next 6 months. If you just mail those folks, that might cost you, I don't know, $3,000 as an example, but you're probably going to get right like a good amount of those opportunities are going to convert into appointments. So I'm just a huge fan of sometimes the medium is the message. Sometimes the way in which you deliver it speaks volumes about what it is you're actually saying.
I love that. Do you know the name Scott Blum? Does that ring a bell? So Scott Blum started buy.com. That was a really good.
Okay.
It's kind of like an eBay, Amazon-esque company. So he's super tight with one of my closest sort of real estate promotion marketing guys. Big shout out to Rick Kurtz if you're listening. So Scott Blum sells by.com, then buys it back. And in between, he launches the Visa Black Card. And if you remember the commercials, it was like this black helicopter landing on top of a building, this, super Jimmy Mackin handsome dude and a gal in like an all black, like almost like Catwoman leather outfit. And it's like the Visa Black Card. It's the same damn Visa card as everybody, but the image that was created by that particular ad and just the color black, that's all it was. So maybe the box needs to be black. And again, whatever we got to do something. Please, for my friend listening, please do something different, especially if you're going to market to high-end expireds. Take that letter, put it inside a Tiffany box, throw a sold sign inside there, stand out, be different, and you will win. That's a good insight for 2025. All right, so
I love that.
As we land the plane, I text Jason and told him that he can't fly with us back from Jackson Hole.
Yes. That's going to be for another podcast.
We will have to. We should do a whole podcast on that flight.
I'll give everyone a pro tip. If you're ever flying with Tom Ferry and he puts a seatbelt on, it's going to be a rough ride.
It's got to get bumpy. All right. So for my friend listening, we've been going for almost 50 minutes. I hope you got a lot of insight here. Thank you for allowing Jimmy and I just to kind of do what we love, which is just talk marketing and talk strategy and be of service to you. So now do me a favor. Now you go be a service of you. What are the adjustments you're going to make to your schedule between now and the end of the year? What are the adjustments you're going to make to your priorities between now and the end of the year? Because all the best marketing, if you don't go execute, means nothing. All this stuff works when you do. Make sense? So give us some comments, share it with a friend, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next show. Thanks so much, Jimmy. Appreciate it, buddy.